hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I suppose a quick note before we get started, we do ask that you keep your microphone muted, but you can keep your video on if you like during the session. It's just to minimize distraction for your fellow participants as the presentation is going on. So I already mentioned this to some people who were here right around 1 o'clock, but for anyone who's just joined us, feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat box. You can let us know your name, maybe your artistic discipline, and perhaps how your work intersects with music. And I will start by introducing myself. My name is Nick Maturo. I'm a project manager at Elan, working on our Quebec Relations project. So I'd like to welcome you today to this webinar, which is presented as a collaboration between Quebec Relations, as well as Elan's membership department, and of course, accelerando.media. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Quebec Relations, it's an Elan project that is first and foremost about helping artists and arts organizations access funding and other key resources offered by the government of Quebec. But we also do organize capacity building webinars like these to share important tools and resources with artists to help you develop your careers and navigate the sometimes tricky terrain that comes along with being a working artist. And we know that has become even trickier, to say the least, during the pandemic. So today I'm really pleased that we can offer what I think is a really interesting webinar along these lines. As Accelerando.media is a project that asks questions which I know are basically on every musician's mind in 2021. How do you get online? How do you get noticed? And how do you get paid? As a musician myself, I know I've certainly asked these questions. Also, in the interest of full disclosure, they're questions that I've tried to help answer in my own small contribution to the Accelerando.media project earlier this year. But rather than have me try to do it justice, I'm very pleased that we have Barbara Scales and Kees van Dranen from Accelerando.media joining us today. So I'll start by introducing them first and foremost. So Barbara is the founder and president of Latitude 45 Arts Promotion Incorporated, which was established in 1981. Latitude 45 is based in Montreal, but represents artists from around the globe. Originally from New York City, Barbara made Montreal her home in 1968. Since 2014, she has been president of the board of directors of the Canadian Music Centre in Quebec. She has also served for over 25 years on the national board of the Canadian Music Centre, as well as serving as an officer on the boards of CNARS, NAPAMA, ISPA, and presiding over the IAMA conference outside of Europe in 2013. So welcome, Barbara. Kees van Dranen is the project manager of Accelerando.media, as well as a consultant and professional arts administrator with more than 30 years experience in music, dance, presenting, and circus arts. Kees started his career in Toronto as the production coordinator with the Tafelmusik Baroque Orchestra. He later moved to Montreal, where he was hired by Cirque du Soleil as administrative director, eventually helping to open Cirque du Soleil's European headquarters in Amsterdam, and then working on Cirque's Saltimbanco tour in Europe. Kees then served as the financial and administrative director of FLAG, a Brussels-based not-for-profit cultural institution, and later as director of finance and administration at Les Grands Ballets Canadiens, and then as assistant general manager and interim director general at RIDO, the National Association of Presenters. Most recently, Kees was the vice president finance for Réalisation Thinkwell Studios Montreal. So once again, a big welcome to Barbara and Kees. Thank you so much for being here. And without any further ado, I'm going to hand things over to them for the presentation today. But I do just want to mention, if you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to type those in the chat. I'll be keeping track of those, and then we'll address those at the end of the presentation. So with that said, I will hand things over to Kees and Barbara.
Thank you very, very much, Nick, and really nice to be here for Elan. I just want to say, first of all, I want to say what a pleasure it was creating accelerando.media, and I want to underscore that Nick's participation in English and in French was really a highlight for us, and getting to know Nick was really a joy. And so we were delighted to be invited here for this today and to meet you, and as an English language arts administrator in Quebec, it's great to be connected to Elan. So think back if you can. It feels like it's, before the volcanoes or something, but anyway, it is. But March 2020 March 13th, 2020, artists from Canada, from Quebec, were touring the world, and we were starting to learn that things were going to be closing down. Artists, in some cases, were more or less stranded, and but what was really clear is that live engagements were going to stop, at least for a short term. We thought, oh, maybe a couple of months. But then, of course, a couple of months stretched on and on and on. On March 15th, or maybe 16th, the Monday, the 16th, I wrote to a bunch of people, most of whom I didn't know terribly well, but I had put together a list with a colleague, with Isaac Goldschneider from Innovation and Concert, to sort of put our heads together on a Zoom call. What's a Zoom call? We all thought. Anyway, we put our heads together on a Zoom call, and to figure out what is going on and how do we deal with lost revenue? How do we deal with borders closing? How do we deal with this entire array of challenges that were suddenly confronting performers in the live arts? I know that many of you are involved in, not in music per se, but bear with me because you'll see how this all ties in. So most of these people were musical artists. And over time, as things stretched on and on, we invited people from some of the European music platforms who explained what was going on with them. And so Medici Music, if you know them, they came and spoke to us, and it became clear that we were looking for and you may, sorry, let me go back to here, to early days. The National Arts Center put together funds for $1,000 a pop for artists to do presentations online. So people held their phones and took out their guitars or their flutes or their sat down at the piano or the harpsichord, and they performed for 45 minutes or so, and it went up on the National Arts Center's website, or it was linked through their Facebook, or sorry, their YouTube channel onto the National Arts Center. And so we were starting to see people making usually not very high quality videos to go into the public sphere and to be paid for it. But we knew that this was going to run out. And we also knew that this was not the way that music was going to be celebrated into the future with these handheld or, local phone things. So anyway, in the course of things, I decided to look at the Canada Council funds. We realized, just one other thought, that the CBC was not really going to help us out in any obvious way, in terms of creating performance opportunities, either on radio or on television. We realized that the National Film Board was not really going to help us out in terms of creating high quality film material to go on out into the world. We also were getting more and more requests for live performances to be converted into video performances, not just from the National Arts Center, but some venues were having their venues converted into kind of film studios where they could do a shoot and then share it with their membership or their community. So municipal organizations in Brossard or in Laval were organizing these things. As were some of my clients were invited to things at the Library of Congress in Washington and other venues in the States and in Europe. And a number of things started to crop up as issues. So there were production value issues. There were, if you're going to spend money on making a video, why not make it something that's really going to be worth having endure, because you are making something which can endure. Then there were the questions of how do you negotiate a contract for this? And the contracts were coming back awfully strange. So I was having, for instance, major organizations sending me basically a live performance contract agreement that read things, that included things like, okay, this will not be a live performance, it will be a video that you will submit to us by such and such a date, but we want a 60-kilometer exclusivity clause. Well, that didn't make any sense, did it? So I started to realize that we needed to think through how this was going to work. Then there were rights issues which came up, because using a composer's music on stage is not the same thing as using it in a digital presentation. So we had to learn about these kinds of things. But not only did I, as an agent, or the musicians that I worked with, need to learn about it, the presenters who were asking us for these things had no idea what they were, in fact, getting themselves into in terms of legal issues and contractual issues. So sometime in the course of the month of July, I decided time to go plunge into Canada Council funding availabilities, and I applied for a digital literacy grant to basically to take us all back to kindergarten, so that we meaning artists, producers, agents, people negotiating these contracts, presenters, and so on, would all be on the same page, and we could have an understanding of how to make this small, we thought, short chapter in the history of music move forward in an intelligent way. And of course, that chapter has stretched. We now realize that this is very much part of the future of performance, whether it's streaming or documentary or created films around music. But I will leave those future perspectives for the moment and ask Case to tell you what happened after I reached out to him and said, Case, you're the man, you can handle this, you can make this make sense. And he did. So Case, take it away.
Thanks, Barbara. And thanks, Ilan, for inviting us here today to present Accelerando. Just in case you're wondering, my name is spelled K-E-E-S, and everyone says Case because it's Dutch, and the two E's in Dutch make an A sound. So when Barbara first requested a grant to the Canada Council, it was for a training program. And by training at that point, she was thinking along the lines of classical training, sort of a classroom with a teacher and then a question and answer session at the end of that. But there were a couple of things that Barbara felt were really important in this training. And one was that it had to be free. And the other that was really important to her was that it had to be bilingual. So anything that was offered in French would be offered in English, and vice versa. Anything offered in English would be offered in French. The other thing that was important was that it would be offered to as many people as possible. So not just a small group of people, but as wide a group as possible. And more specifically, it would be offered to individual musicians, small groups, duos, trios, sextets, octets, orchestras, opera companies, and larger institutions were not excluded, but they have their own associations, their own infrastructures. They don't need the sort of support that the individual musician or the small group does. The other thing that was important, it was something that could last for a maximum amount of time, but with a minimal amount of effort and money. And the other thing that we thought was really important was that it not duplicate existing resources. In Quebec, we're very lucky. We've got le Conseil québécois de la musique, we've got La Disque that offer quite a large series of trainings. Ilan also does training. English Canada is not quite as lucky because there is no sort of national organization that covers everything. There are provincial organizations that do this, but you need to know who they are, you need to participate. The ultimate goal of the project was to share a little knowledge on many subjects instead of having someone or a few people very knowledgeable about a very specific issue. So really big public, little bit of knowledge. And really the way Barbara put it at the time was people need to know what questions to ask before they start. So that was the philosophy behind the initial grant. Well, we started talking to people across Canada. We talked to presenters, we talked to musicians, we talked to agents, we talked to anyone that works in the music field, from Halifax to Vancouver in English and French. And we asked them, what would you like to know? What do you not know yet? What more could we do? We came up with about 150 questions that people had. We went back to the Conseil québécois de la musique, and they suggested something we hadn't thought of. They suggested doing short capsules. I worked with Rideau, and at Rideau at that time, we started a program called Profession Diffuseur, which is a training program for people who want to be presenters, because there is no official training program. So Rideau put this together. It was a lot of work, developing the curriculum, finding the people to do it. It's hours and hours, hundreds of hours worth of work, a lot of money. The grant was not that large. We had a short period of time. So when the Conseil québécois de la musique suggested this video capsules, we said, that's worth exploring. So that's what we did. We then went around and hired experts. Nick was one of those. We found people in French and in English in Montreal and in Toronto. We put together a video my English team to record and to edit these things, and we put them all together. One of the other questions we had is, what do we do with these capsules once we got them? Do we send them out to anyone who's interested in them, or do we create our own website? And we decided to create a website, which is the accelerando.media website, where they would be available for anyone and everyone. And there are a couple of reasons for that. One, it's easier for us to update things if we want to. The other is the reason that everyone is doing websites nowadays is data, because data is the new gold, the new oil. And if you've got access to data, you've got access to information, so possibly money. And the third reason was to make sure that the statistics we got were good and that we could use them for the Canada Council reporting. So before going to visit the site, one of the things that is really important to note is that we do not offer any sort of legal advice or advice of any sort on this site. The site is informational only. We try to keep the information as precise as possible. But like I said a few minutes ago, the idea is that you ask the right questions and then you go further in your own search for what you need to know for your music needs. Some statistics, I took a quick look today. We've had about 3,900 visitors to the site. That's from May, end of May this year to now, to this morning. No surprise, 89% of them, 88.8% of them come from Canada. The great majority of those come from Quebec, followed by the United States, 4.3%, then Mexico. And it's interesting, Mexico, I took a look at the statistics. They went like this in November because Barbara did a conference in November. And right after her conference, the statistics went right up. There are people who are frequenting the site, frequent it for quite a long period of time. In Canada, it's about 7.5 minutes. The best people for staying on the site are the Swiss, of course, at 12 plus minutes. And the Mexicans are also pretty good, but the French, Cartesian French at 9 minutes are right up there as well. So let's take a look at the site. I'm just going to share my screen now with you. And share. So this is what Accelerando looks like. It's a very traditional site in the way it's set up: home, about, the capsules, the raw sources, the media library, credits, contacts. It is available in French and in English. Just click on one or the other and everything will change. Reasons why Accelerando happened, sort of questions we can ask, the sort of disclaimer we've got. Again, it doesn't offer any legal advice. This is the about section that Barbara talked about, how it came about. And then we'll go right to the capsules. Basically, we tried to divide them into three major categories: finance, marketing, and rights. And then there are a couple of other ones. The about is basically Barbara talking about how the project was born. Artistic discussion is a discussion between a musician and the person who sort of looked after the video filming of this, Damien Sequeiros. It's an interesting discussion on how to approach music now. What should you be looking for in a video? What types of videos can you make? It's a very free-form discussion. I think in all it's about 20 minutes. And the touring question at the end is just a sort of fun question. I asked Barbara, and the question is, should I give up touring as a musician? And of course, the answer is no. And you can find out why if you take a look at it. One of the important things about this site is that it is entirely under the Creative Commons license. If you don't know what Creative Commons is, then I'll show you what it is. And just go down to the rights section. And these are all questions that relate in some way or other to rights. And go down to the very last one, which is, what is Creative Commons? And the screen comes up. This is Guillaume Desiel, who is an expert on Creative Commons and also everything that's cryptocurrencies. It's in French, but it's subtitled in English. And I would strongly suggest you look at it if you don't know what Creative Commons is. And even if you do, he gives a very, very good description of how it works. One of the things we did also was that when someone talks about mentions a URL or another resource, we try to make sure that all of the URLs are included down below. So you can just click on those for more information. The other thing we did was we put together a list of resources that are available that talk about all of these topics. Just go down. There's a list. You can download the list. You can add a resource and also go to the capsules. If I view the list of resources, you can see that there are three filters up on the top right here. You can filter by language, by type of resource, and then you can sort. There are, according to this, 567 results. So there are 567 types of URLs here. Take a look. We'll just go by English, and we'll choose associations, and we'll go, and there are 73 results. Cultural Industries of Ontario North, Canadian Music Centre, Canadian Live Music Association, and so forth, and so forth. Music PEI, Music Ontario. And they're all there. You can click on the link and go to their site. Or if you want to, you can just download the entire list of resources. Click on it. It opens up in a sort of pre-Google Sheet screen. It takes a second or two. And open with Google Sheets. And just wait until it goes. And there you are, all 576. Actually, there aren't 576 because it hasn't been completely updated, but 567, but there are only 564 here because the last three that were added haven't been updated in here yet. So that's something we need to look at. But they're all there, and then you can just use the Google Sheets functions to sort by whatever it is that you want. So if you want to see only all of the English ones, you click English, okay, and you've got only the English ones. The other thing that we did was, given that it was, to go back. Given that it was a music-based project, we decided to add a media library. So anyone that has a music video, and we're looking for things that are sort of under 5 minutes, 10 minutes maximum, in the type of music that this project was directed to. So that would be classical music, jazz, world music, pretty much anything but pop music. Just click on the link here to fill out a form. and we can upload it to this site. So right now there are about 10 videos on there that cover everything. François Bourassa is jazz, Jean-Philippe Rameau, Hank Knox, Baroque music, stick and bow. What would you call it, Barbara? Sort of world crossover?
Classical. This is a song about Che Guevara, actually. I mean, it's a musical piece. So it's but they are incredibly versatile musicians who do everything from Pierre Lapointe to and Radiohead to Bach and Schumann and Piazzolla, Nina Simone. I don't know. They're musicians. Yeah.
So,
So we were looking for things that sort of show the best qualities of interaction between videographers or filmmaker and musicians that really show that close collaboration which emerges between artists of film and music, to avoid what, those early days, the material that was coming out in those early days of the National Arts Center. Hold your phone up kind of videos. So we thought we'd get some good examples in here. Yeah.
So that's pretty much an overview of the site. The capsules, there are, I think, about 65 of them. Just go down. Search engine optimization. This is someone you probably recognize who did it in French and English. It's as complete as we could be. Like I said, the idea here is to give you basic knowledge about a particular subject, and that you can go further with it if you need to, if you're interested. I don't have anything further to say about the site. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them now. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Yeah, I didn't see any questions in the chat, but maybe I'll invite folks to just simply unmute, and if you want to turn your camera on to ask a question, please go ahead.
Until there are questions, I could talk a little bit about our upcoming next steps, because we want to enlist all of your assistance in a way. So while we were developing this from November of 2020 to June of 2021, there was like little mushrooms coming up after the rain. There were many different sites that emerged, which were some of which were things that of course, that had always existed, like that had long existed, like YouTube and Vimeo and so on. But there were also some very specific platforms for presenting produced work that were either genre specific or geolocalized. Some were focused on being able to monetize productions. Some were focused on visibility for the work and the artist involved. Some were accessible to an audience for free. Some were accessible at pay-per-view, or some by subscription. Some platforms had exclusivity clauses, some not. So I thought, how do we manage this tangle of new and very confusing access to platforms, either as an artist, producer, or as a member of the public even? So I applied for another little grant, not the scale of the one that built accelerando.media, but another grant to see if we could put together a catalog of sites, of platforms that people use to post their material or to see material by other artists. And that's where you come in for now. We're going to be working on this for the next 6 months or so. And what we're hoping is that we'll have a very good list and create a catalog, but with a lot of information which is carefully analyzed as to whether it's primarily for monetization or for visibility. How, if it's for monetization, how does that work? Is it pay-per-view, and how does that get distributed? Is it subscription? How does that get distributed? Is it geolocalized? Is it good for, you know, what's the best strategy for using it? Is it genre specific? Like there's something called earlymusic.tv. There's a jazz station called, a platform called Quest that Quincy Jones started. And how do you submit material? So we want to try to create a catalog where users, whether it's the artist or producer user or the audience user, might be able to get some insight, and it will become part of the accelerando.media. And then the other part of that grant is to look at strategies, and maybe we'll do some webinars on this as we get our thoughts pulled together and reach out to more people who think more about this. How do we integrate the video production material that artists and producers and agents have access to now, and presenters, with the touring or production of live presentation? So how does this element integrate into the strategies for touring or production? How does this element of video material oblige us to think, and to how does it become part of our planning and strategizing? So that is the next iteration. And the little section on touring, should I stop touring? Of course not. But then the question is, what do I do with this visual material when I'm also touring? And how do I deal with, say, a presenter in Trois-Rivières who wants to live stream my concert, and a presenter in Quebec City who wants to live stream my concert? And what if they want to live stream the same performance? And who are they live streaming to? And what kind of restrictions do they have? And who wants to make money off of this? And how are they doing it? And how do we all come to terms with the best way that makes it a win-win-win for all involved, including the public and the artist? So that's...
And like the first project, everything we do will be publicly available, will be free of charge and bilingual. And those are non-negotiable points. Just to mention that all of the questions in Accelerando are in either French or English. A few are subtitled, 3 or 4, something like that. If you're comfortable in both official languages, watch both, because they're not often the same person that answers them, and you get an other perspective. Other points are covered or raised by the other person. So it's worth spending a few extra minutes. I don't think any of them are longer than 3 or 4 minutes, except for the artistic discussion. So you're not going to lose a lot of time.
We did have a couple of questions in the chat that maybe we can go to. First of all, to your knowledge, through your research, has there been many platforms that offer easily accessible royalty-free music for creation purposes? Is this something you came across in Accelerando?
Yeah, because, well, one of the things we did was we looked for music to introduce the capsules. There are a number of sites available. None of them I would consider easy to use, and the choice of music is limited. We do talk in the capsules about obtaining rights for music. One of the people, Victoria Novak, says that it's often easier to compose your own music than to obtain rights, particularly if you want to use something that's very well known, if you want to use Prince or Drake or something like that. It's very difficult. Composing can often be a cheaper solution. Royalty-free music sites exist. Just type into Google royalty-free music, free royalty-free music, and you'll get a whole bunch of sites. If you're willing to pay a little bit of money, you can find numerous sites as well. It's not expensive. Like I said, the choice is limited. Music I came across is not wonderful. There's a lot of classical music that's in the public domain, and if you don't know what the public domain is, check it out on Accelerando. That is available. New music, created music. You just have to look.
We also have a question from Jenny asking the most affordable way to set up a home studio for live streaming with reasonable sound quality, as well as best streaming platforms.
Best streaming platforms is a question that requires a quality analysis, and I'm not ready to do that. Nick knows a lot about streaming platforms and can give you criteria that you can use to evaluate best streaming platforms. Is it free? Is it in terms of the public you reach? There was an article in The Economist the other day about a Turkish music site that charges people to put their music online, but the advantage is that it goes only to people who like Turkish music. So you're going really to the people you want to reach. That could be a best streaming platform if you're into Turkish music and you want to attract other Turkish music fans. The best known ones are Bandcamp. Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, if depending on whether you're interested in video or audio only, there's a whole range of platforms. I mean, Twitch is a really big one for audio visual now, which is like, I mean, geared primarily towards video games, but the number of sort of concerts that I saw on Twitch over the course of the pandemic has been notable, and all sort of really high quality stuff. And from an audience perspective, I think like a pretty enjoyable experience. So yeah, depending on what your needs, Case is exactly right here. Depending on what your needs are, you know, there's a whole bunch of other options. But I believe in one of the capsules that I did, I think I touched on some of this stuff, but I'm also happy to chat via email to give any sort of tips that I may have as well.
Also, if you go to the resource list and if you just click on streaming platforms, you will see that there are at least a half dozen of the best known ones already. Early Music TV is there, Medici is there, from what I remember. So there is also, to answer the first part of the question, I believe there are a couple of references to setting up a home studio in the resource list. I can't remember under what they would have been categorized, but check it out. Again, a Google search on home studios will give you a whole lot of information. There are numerous American blogs and sites that talk about this. I don't remember coming across any Canadian ones, although the Manitoba Music Center, or I'm not sure what it's called anymore, has a really good resource list as well. Check them out. No, check out the resource page on accelerando.media.
I'm also going to share a link to a YouTube webinar that we did in March in collaboration with ArtsCast, which is another Elan project that is specifically about live streaming. And they did a really handy webinar that has some ideas about sort of cheap and simple kind of home live streaming setup. So I'm just pasting that in the chat now. Feel free to have a look.
I wanted to say that maybe a year ago, I read an article in the New York Times that said, okay, hold on to your toques. They said that they thought TikTok was the future of music online. And I'm taking that threat seriously. And I've reached out to TikTok Canada to look into their structures for creating professional platforms through TikTok and how you can make best use of this. Of course, it's all about creating links to something else and creating visibility through TikTok. But I do think that between TikTok and Reels, and I think Spotify, not that it's in anybody's good books these days, but Spotify is also creating, or is it SoundCloud? Maybe it's SoundCloud. It's creating also a visual platform for very, very short excerpts or features. And I do think that, you know, in a culture where people sit with their phones and scroll and scroll and scroll, there may be something to this. So depends what you want the streaming platform to do, or what you want the visual material platform to do. Do you want people to go blink and say, hey, that looks interesting? or do you want them to actually absorb the full depth of the artistry in that 1 minute? Then you have to bring them someplace else.
Can I explain what the project is? The project is actually, it's the music is going to very particular people. So it will be a list of musicians doing kind of personalized concerts for people in long-term care homes and hospitals. And they'll be able to interact a bit. So like my first thought would be, oh, do this on Zoom, but maybe Zoom is not the best place to do that. Is there something with a better sound quality? So it doesn't need to get visibility. That's not, and in fact, you don't want it to get visibility because it's personalized, but you want it a decent quality,
You want it to be delivered. I mean, it sounds like something that you could do with YouTube or Vimeo and just, channel it. If you want it to be restricted access, you can put it on a private. I don't know whether you've looked at something like, what is it called? SAMS, the Société Art Musique Santé. Françoise Henry is the person who runs that. But they work specifically with people for whom music can be part of the care that they have in their healthcare.
That's definitely a good resource here in Quebec. In English Canada, Deborah Chandler is the person to talk to.
Deborah Chandler?
Okay. Yeah, she runs something in Ontario, and she can certainly put you in touch with the rest of Canada. She's well connected.
Yeah. There's, in fact, internationally, there are many organizations. Well, there's one very good one in the United States. I think it may be called NOAA. I don't remember what the acronym is. And Sylvia Lécuyer also is working with SAMS, but she's based in Vancouver. And there's an English and French connection through Vancouver. And in Australia, there's a very, very good network also for healthcare, people in treatment facilities receiving direct music feeds. I've also thought about the importance of reaching out through prisons, environments, or other kinds of institutional people who are within institutions, including boarding schools and so on. I mean, there are many people who are just simply not going to get to live performances for whatever reason, and ways of accessing them. But I think it's a great thing that you're doing. I read a little bit about it, Jenny. Yeah, it's great.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for the resources. We'll definitely look into them.
So Françoise Henry, you can find her on LinkedIn or, yeah, and I think it's called SAMS, Société Art, anyway, acronyms. Yeah.
Too many acronyms to keep track of. We had a question up next from Teresa, who was asking the procedures for using music in films, cue lists, the responsibilities and how-tos. Are there capsules on this topic in terms of sort of use in films?
No, there's nothing that technical. There are a couple of capsules on how do you go about getting the rights for music, but nothing about technically what do you do once you've got the rights and you want to insert them into a film or use them in a theater production, something like that. That's beyond the realm of this project.
Yeah, we were really looking more at the interconnection between producers and end users, not so much the micmac of how do you make it. And except for this one conversation about sort of artistry between Thibaut Bertin-Magit and Damien Sequeiros. But, there are people I could maybe recommend, but it's really in the how to make a film category. And that's not, I mean, we're not filmmakers. We're people who are dealing with live music generally and trying to figure out how to take the live music and musicians who are engaged in live music and bring them into this new digital universe and figure out how to make that digital universe work for them.
Yeah, I kind of understood that. It's just because when we're doing films, we need music, right? And I make it a point to take on local talent because yeah, how else will they know them? How else will they be recognized? And they do their own things on Spotify and everything, but some of them have won with the HMMAs and whatever, they've won awards, etc. But once I get them and I have the rights and everything, like I found some release forms online where they sign, and I'm very careful of what I make them sign, because I'm not only protecting their rights, I need to protect mine as well. And then comes the topic of the queue list through SOCAN, because I have a film right now that's doing pretty well in awards. And every time these across the world internationally, they keep on playing that movie. It's a short film of 18 minutes, but all the music is being played each time. So they deserve to have that. So to get it, they have to reach out to SOCAN and fill out this queue list where I give them where the music is being played at what minute, at what, I'll give them all the details. I just was wondering, I'm so novice at this. I don't want to be doing the wrong thing. Yeah.
The people at SOCAN can help you. There is a capsule done by Geneviève Coté, who was the head legal counsel and advisor at SOCAN. She's now retired, but there are new people at SOCAN who can be of help with exactly these questions. So
Okay.
I would recommend going directly to SOCAN, because it's the mechanics of their information and distribution of resources.
They're very, very useful capsules, Geneviève Coté's, both in English and in French. And one of the things she touches on as well, and that is directly what you were talking about, is international performances and how complicated it is and how little or how much control you have of that. And basically, it's the national organization where the music is being performed that is responsible for giving that to SOCAN. But if you know about it, you can do it. So to make sure that it happens, and they will get in touch with. Check it out. It is complicated. The more information you have that you can give to SOCAN, the more likely it is that your musicians will get paid via all of these international arrangements. It's a very complex subject, but SOCAN is extremely open. Their goal is that musicians get paid. So anything they can do to help musicians get paid, they will make sure that you know about it and that you do it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Congratulations. I was looking through your website when you were speaking. So there's a lot of content, and I'm really anxious to dive into it and look through it. I already saw a couple of sites on your resources. So thank you so much.
Well, I think the main thing is that we're really in the ABCs, and this is not to make you an expert. It's to help you understand the kinds of questions, as Kay said, the kinds of questions you need to ask as you're getting going, and in taking live art in one way or another into the digital universe. And that's what this is good for. I think it will help as a kind of a roadmap, maybe the main highways, and then you need to deep dive, but I hope it gives you some access to some resources you can use to do that.
Absolutely. The more the merrier, they say, right? So
yes.
Sometimes it might not apply like everything, but there is a line, a website, a capsule, something that will help me towards something else. So anyway, thank you very, very much.
There is so much information out there. Really, you can drown in information. When we put together this, the resource list that you see on the Accelerando site, basically we were looking at things that apply to Canada. So as often as possible, we try to find Canadian websites. There are a few international websites. There are a few American websites for things that like ASCAP, American Performing Rights Societies, international intellectual property, that sort of thing. But as much as possible, it's Canadian. But type into Google anything and you'll get 60 times what's on that site. There really is so much information. The hard thing is going through it and finding what's relevant to you. And we try to do that here with really as much as possible Canadian resources.
I think.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, good luck.
We are coming up on 2 o'clock, but I did just want to take one more question from the chat from Jamila. They're asking resources on understanding agreements between beatmaker and singer-songwriter. So sort of, I suppose, songwriting and kind of production credits and rights along those lines.
Nothing that specific, but again, Geneviève Côté with SOCAN will talk about how, when you get to that point, how you should negotiate between singer-songwriters and other musicians from the beginning, say who's got what rights, what percentage, that sort of thing. But there's nothing as specific as this question, no.
I think Guillaume, if I'm not mistaken, Guillaume talks also about the distribution of royalties and how these are shared once there's revenue.
Yeah, but the important thing is to make sure that it's clear from the beginning who gets what. And Geneviève Côté talks about that. Contracts, lawyers,
yeah,
necessary evil, but
you don't always need, I mean, it depends on what scale of operation you are. You may not need to have a lawyer as long as you get some of the key terms and concepts into your agreement, but it never hurts to have a friend who's a lawyer who'll look it over.
And I mean, from an Elan perspective, we can certainly help connect people with, lawyers or legal advisors that we know from within our networks. If you're ever wanting to make contact with somebody, please just reach out. You can reach out to me, by responding to the email that I sent with a link for this webinar. And, if that's ever a need, please feel free to reach out and we can definitely help with that.
And there are also a couple of lawyers that were used as experts, so you can contact them. They should all have contact information on the credits page of Accelerando. Just go down, look at their bios, and you should be able to contact them that way.
Your presence here indicates that we were doing something that serves somebody, and that's great.
Totally, and I think it serves a really broad audience as well. As we've sort of seen here, the specifics to some of these questions can be quite specific, but I think the resources in the capsules on the site are such a good starting point, and serve as really useful guideposts, as you say, for even just figuring out what questions to ask, because a lot of us are starting, from scratch. If you're making music or using music in your work, it's very difficult. So I think this is a super useful resource.
Well, thank you for having us, Nick. It's been great to hear these sort of questions, and something we'll keep in mind when we're starting to work on the streaming platforms, right, Barbara?
Right. And so perhaps you can contact either Case or myself or Nick, and Nick can forward information to us. If you have any thoughts about favorite streaming platforms that you like to use, or either to put your material on or to view material, especially if they're specialty kinds of things, but really any. We're very interested to know what people are using to share their material or to view material from other people. So keep us in mind when you're viewing something that you like. Netflix counts, but we're interested in things that are a little more specialized too.
And by the same token, if anyone has any questions that sort of go beyond what's on the capsules, I'm always happy to give my own input based on that. If ever it's the sort of thing that I can pass along to Barbara or Case to weigh in as well, I'm happy to do that. So there's a quick question saying,
is one of our experts, just so you know. I am not. Nick is an expert. Yeah.
But perhaps you could refer me to another expert in that case. So there's a question about, is the site open to sharing podcasts on the site just for future thought?
As a resource, sure.
Okay.
Is that what you're thinking? Is that what you mean? I think we would be happy to share podcasts and have them listed as a resource. Is that right, Case? We can do that.
Absolutely. As much as we can, we want information to circulate. The only condition we would have is that if it's not available under Creative Commons license, that it's clearly stated. But the goal of the basis for both Accelerando and any future projects is that the information shared as widely as possible. with no cost to other users. The only thing that we ask is that you credit the original source.
A youth podcast. Okay, if it can be valuable information for people trying to understand how best to use this digital turn for live artists to use the digital, absolutely.
All right. Well, that brings us to just after 2:00. So since I try to be conscious of the length of a Zoom call for all of us and the number of hours that we log on Zoom in the course of a day, I think that does bring us to the close of the webinar. So well, thank you again, first of all, to Case and Barbara for this. This was really great. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. It was really nice to have you here to learn about the project, to ask some really great questions, and to share your thoughts. So your presence is very much appreciated. We will be sharing the archived recording as soon as we've been able to sort of edit and upload that. So I'll be in touch via email with everyone as soon as I can to share that. And of course, if you want to share that within your own networks for anyone who wasn't present today, but who might, appreciate this information, we certainly encourage you to do so. So with that said, wishing everybody a great rest of your day, and thanks again for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.